For the last 3 decades, the prison population in the United States has skyrocketed. Unprecedented zero-tolerance policies and harsh punishment for minor offenses are some of the reasons that contribute to America having the highest rate of incarceration in the world. 2.3 million is the official statistic. However, the numbers are much higher according to George Samueli, a senior fellow at the Global Policy Institute who has researched incarceration trends inside the United States and abroad.
That statistic isn't incomplete because that leaves out there's something like 4.5 to 5 million people who are within the criminal justice system, who are on parole or on probation, and so they're, in other words, still within the actual system. So you're talking about something like 7 million people in the United States who are immersed within the criminal justice system, either incarcerated, either in state jails, state prisons, federal prisons, or they're on probation or on parole. And probation can be quite serious business, restrictions on travel and that kind of thing.
Every year, more than 500,000 inmates are released from prison. Due to insufficient rehabilitation programs and real-life training, during their time of incarceration, transition to public life is overwhelming and difficult. For many, the stigma of, quote, being a felon will follow them for the rest of their lives. The Department of Justice reports that almost 2/3 of those who are released will be arrested again within 3 years. 5 Omar Muallamak was incarcerated for 12 years in New York State. 5 of those years, he was held in solitary confinement, spending 23 hours a day entirely alone in a 6x9 cell for a nonviolent offense. Today, he's a well-known anti-solitary confinement human rights activist. This is his main office. The walls are covered with photos and memorabilia, and each image has a story.
And so for me, I always keep those visuals no matter where I work, because it reminds me of how much work we still have to do, but also that that's where I came from. And so many people are there that rely on me, that need me, that are still there.
Through his own organization, as well as working with others, 5 leads and assists formerly incarcerated men and women to navigate the hardships of returning to society. As a father, he is also involved in programs preventing youth and children from entering or being affected by the criminal justice system.
I do a lot of work here around child welfare organizing, and then also against generally mass incarceration, right? Incarcerated Nation, we work to support over 400 of us who are leaders. Each one of us has our own project. So we kind of have a little hands in every lane. And then the child welfare system feeds up youth and kids into the prison system. So collaboratively, we all work together.
Common problems facing former inmates are inadequate access to drug and alcohol treatments, unemployment, and difficulty finding stable housing.
If you are a married couple and a person goes off to prison, your husband gets locked up in Queens, and you live here in Harlem, you can be evicted because of his arrest in Queens or his arrest anywhere if he had drug possession, or if he had just a bag of weed, or he had medication he had no sort of validation for, right? The person is then incarcerated. In order for you to fight eviction, you have to then sign paperwork and sort of press charges against that person, saying he's not allowed to come on housing property.
An inmate is released with nothing more than a one-way bus ticket to the nearest city and $40. In New York, that's often Times Square, Port Authority bus terminal. It doesn't matter if you were locked up for months, years, or decades.
After 10, 20 years, often decades in incarceration, people end up at 42nd Street, Times Square, decades later, with just a Metro card and an address to go to for parole. That's it. That's all the resources they offer. And so when you come home, you say, damn, I want to see my family. I want to see my kids. But you're not allowed back into housing. So 72% of people who live in housing has a person who's incarcerated within their family. And then you take America's stats, where 1 in 3 people of color are incarcerated, right? Every 20 person who lives in a certain block distance is impacted by long-term incarceration. So then you have this huge system that incorporates incarcerating so many different members of your family. Girls, ladies, women are the highest growing population in jail today. And so that capture rate of more people that are directly impacted is guaranteed in housing.
And that's why many end up in homeless shelters or what is called three-quarter housing.
When public doesn't become the answer, privatization becomes the answer. So a person who owns a private house can open up a 3-quarter housing and just house people who are felons who can't live in that distance. So then you're assigned back to your county of commitment. All of this is about profit. All of this is about money.
Jermaine was 16 years old when he was tried and convicted as an adult in a New York courtroom. He would spend the next 26 years of his life incarcerated behind bars for drug charges and murder.
Facing with that much time, it's like my life is over. Like I'm gonna die in prison. That was my mindset, because like, how do you come back from that?
He was released on September 13th, 2017, to a world he was secluded from for more than 2 decades.
It's scary because I didn't know what obstacles I was gonna be faced with coming out. Like, cause like I left when I was 16, so this is a whole new world for me. Everything is new. Transit system, everything is like new. The computer, like, like all this is new to me. So. It was challenging, but it wasn't challenging. I mean, I guess because when I came home, I had a tight family structure, so I had a little more stability with me when I came home.
Jermaine met Five shortly after being released and is now studying at the Institute for Transformative Mentoring, ITM, at the New School. It's a program for formerly incarcerated men and women to become mentors to keep youth out of jail. Five Muallamak is director of the youth program here. Images on these walls remind them both of how far they've come, but also the long road ahead to reform.
It just brings back so many memories, like of me just being, and I just left over a year ago, so it's like wow, like this is actually my life a couple of years ago.
Having a criminal record makes it almost impossible to find or keep a good, stable job. Of course, there are always exceptions. While 33 states, including New York, have some form of ban-the-box legislation which prevents employers from asking about the applicant's criminal record, companies are still permitted to do a background check later in the employment process.
Finding a decent job has been challenging. Right now I work in a shelter. So I work in a shelter overnight. So finding good employment is really the obstacle that everybody that's incarcerated faces.
Between 60 to 75% of former inmates find themselves jobless at least up to 1 year after being released. Marcus was arrested and sent to New York's notorious Rikers Island prison facility on charges of weapons possession last year. He was 20 years old and spent a month and a half before being bailed out. That was enough time for Marcus to now be in what is called the system. However, his first brush with law enforcement was when he was only 13 years old. Going through the cycle of being in and out of courtrooms and bookings, at a young age he says he doesn't want anyone else to go through what he went through for something like a school fight. He's actively involved with the Raise the Age campaign, which calls for an age-appropriate approach to a crime committed.
Throughout my life I have been in and out of the precinct, in and out of bookings. My first time being in bookings I was 14. With a bunch of men, like, not knowing what was gonna happen next.
But finding a job because of his criminal record at Rikers was a daunting task, even as he was trying to give back to his community in Brooklyn through his activism. At one point, he was about to give up looking for employment, until he started attending the youth program here at ITM.
Actually got fired from the first 3 jobs I tried to get when I first came home. Like, literally, I would be there for like a week, and once they ran my background, no, we can't work with you anymore. It's nothing to do, then convert back to what you were doing before, like hustling and stuff like that. And that's the sad part. It's just like basically a cycle that you're stuck in once you get labeled. And that's the label, a felon. Once I get labeled a felon, nobody wants to work with me. Nobody wants me around. Nobody wants any form of contact with me. And at a point in time, I wanted to give up. Before I even got this summer youth job, honestly, I didn't even want to come on the interview. Like, it just so happened that me and him clicked automatically on the interview that I was like, nah, I don't want to pass this job up. Like, I was honestly supposed to start as an office assistant. Then I just went to the class and fell in love with it. And I'm like, yeah, I could come, can I attend? You could put me on this.
Marcus says all many ask for is just a second fighting chance.
It's not against the law to have a felon on payroll. Some people just feel like, okay, he might do this or he might do that. They judge a book by its cover. Instead of sitting down, maybe trying to have a little conversation with the person, get to know them and say, all right, he doesn't seem like a bad person, maybe we'll give him a no. Once they see that name, felon, you're going.
The stigma of incarceration extends to educational opportunities. Not only do 70% of college application forms ask about criminal records, many public and private schools will not accept kids who have been formerly incarcerated.
So then they have to go to alternative schools, which are still good programs, but half of the times they're still trying to get money for themselves because they don't have a stable home, or there's a lot behind just youth incarcerated. Not everything is just plain-sighted, like, oh, they had a fight, so they're bad kids. Sometimes it's a broken home behind that. Sometimes it's a trigger behind that fight. It wasn't just a bad kid lashing out. A lot of kids definitely are not getting jobs coming out of prison, and it's just a lot to readapt to.
And so for inmates who are finally released, re-entering the world often feels like an extended punishment.
It's a recycling door. Once you're in the system, because I guess for some, they feel, well, I ain't worth nothing no more, so this is what I'm gonna continue to be doing because now my life is over. So they keep going in the system, But now you gotta resort to what everything you know is crime, or how to get some fast money.
Jermaine is determined to make a change, despite the many obstacles he's faced and those ahead of him. His newly launched program, YAPP, Gangs in Prison Prevention Program, teaches youth to write resumes or learn different computer programs, among other skills that will help them in life. Younger members, in Jermaine's own words, will have the opportunity for, quote, kids to be kids.
To start my organization and doing great things in the community and just giving back, being a productive member of society.
Marcus is now a partner in a clothing printing shop with the Incarcerated Nation, as he awaits permanent employment as a youth mentor. 5 Mu'allamak continues to work on the local, state, and national front in schools, universities, and communities, but also with legislators and government officials to end solitary confinement and for real, tangible reform in the criminal justice system. Grassroots movements and organizations working on a local level to bring about change to their communities, and the determination from those who really care to make a difference is detrimental for America's criminal justice system. In Washington, there is talk of a new criminal justice reform bill. It'll only affect less than 3% of the inmates currently in federal prisons alone, and not the millions in state and private prisons. It's called the First Step Act, and supporters say that's what they hope it will be, a first step.